Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner with The Wedding Biz. Last week I mentioned something that I want to bring up again, and that is that I really enjoy getting direct messages, DMs, on Instagram. So let me know which interviews you've really enjoyed and who you'd like me to have on the show and any questions that you have about The Wedding Biz. And you can find and follow us on Instagram at The Wedding Biz. So last week's episode, if you miss it, was with Rennie Pedersen, founder and president of Bliss Weddings and Events. And today's guest, Chris J. Evans, a luxury wedding and destination photographer who has photographed weddings in Italy, Santa Barbara, Laguna Beach, Hawaii, and Napa Valley. He's had features in People magazine and multiple covers of California Wedding Day and Arizona Bride. He's also been in Brides, Martha Stewart, Destination I Do, and more. So enjoy this conversation with Chris J. Evans. Hey, Chris, it's so good to have you on The Wedding Biz. Gosh, we've known each other a long time. It's so good to have you on now.
Thank you so much, Andy. I think we first met in Ireland years ago.
I wish it was Ireland. It wasn't. It was another. I think it was engaged somewhere else.
Somewhere else.
Yeah, or a few times, something like that. But
maybe Mexico then. Somewhere good.
Yeah, I think that might have been what it is. But you know, Chris, when I was kind of researching you, I understand that your mother achieved some notoriety as a couture wedding dress and fashion designer back in the 80s, and your father is a celebrated sculptor, painter, philosopher. How did your parents' passions influence who you are today?
Oh, man, I'm so happy we're starting with them. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been I was so lucky to be raised in such a creative household, and some of my oldest memories are of my mother just dressing some of the most beautiful women and celebrities of that era and just incredible gowns, and just watching that play. It was just, there's some of my oldest memories. And so weddings were sort of always where I was going. And with my father, you know, he was always just, how can we think further? How can we be more enlightened? How can we pursue a life of love and beauty and tread lightly as we can in this world? And I was just really lucky to be raised like that.
Whoa, interesting. You know, combining what you just said between both parents. But did you, when did you have a passion for photography? Did you have that when you were young?
So it started when I was in about 7th grade. So this is back in the 90s. I don't want to give an exact year, but one of my mom's best friends gave me a Canon AE1 film camera for, I think it was my 14th birthday. And I loved it right away. I mean, it was just my lifestyle. I grew up in Laguna Beach, so I was always skateboarding and surfing and just that SoCal lifestyle, and be able to document that in black and white and learn about photography in that world was just so incredible for me. And I've never lost that passion.
You know, it's interesting you say 7th grade, because that's when I discovered, I'm obviously not a professional photographer, but I discovered photography in 7th grade and got, I don't know, this could be way before your time, but it was a Bogan T35 and larger.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah. And turned, black and white photography, and turned my parents' laundry room into my photography studio with the developer and fixer and all of that. Yeah. And I didn't know how to develop negatives. I had trouble with that, but so I would eventually hire that out, and then I would just print stuff myself. So I've always had a passion. So it's fun that you discovered it at that age. So how then did you get into weddings? I mean, after school, did you go right into it, or did you have some other career?
Yeah. So weddings came much later in my life. You know, I always had this love for photography. And like I said, I was documenting my lifestyle. And then in the early 2000s, I actually got signed to be a model. I was signed to Wilhelmina, and I got to do a lot of in front of the camera work. And that's where the fashion photography became introduced to me. And I fell in love with creating these incredible these fairy tales and these storylines and these very stylized images. Even though I was in front of the camera at the time, my passion really was ignited for that. So then I started shooting fashion stuff. All my friends were models. I started shooting bands. I used to play in bands as well. So I'd shoot band stuff. And then it wasn't until I moved to Maui in 2010 that a girlfriend asked me to do her wedding. And that was the first time I did a wedding. I'd already been taking pictures for a long, long time.
Wow. Did you start with your own studio, or did you work for someone else? How did you make that transition to full time?
I'd never shot for anyone else. My friend asked me to do her wedding, and I was kind of reluctant at first, but she's like, look, your wife's a bridesmaid, your daughter's the flower girl. I love your work. Just treat it like a fashion shoot. You can't mess up if you try. And I'm like, okay, like that's my love language if someone tells me that. And I just shot it. And then I put those pictures on Facebook because Instagram didn't exist yet. And then another girlfriend I worked with at the restaurant, I was working at Mama's Fish House on Maui, and she asked me to do her wedding. And then it was like a snowball from there.
That's great. Oh, and I'm just, I mean, obviously you know how much I love Maui. So to have that environment as a backdrop, I mean, what more could you ask for?
I know I had idyllic, like, palm trees and oceans and sunsets, like at my disposal.
That's it. So why'd you leave Maui?
I'd been in the industry there for a long time, 10 years. And I just feel like I had personally begun to outgrow it. For me, just I'm so passionate about each couple, but at that level, I was really only shooting 4 venues that could really accommodate the type of weddings I was doing. And I really had this longing and this drive to seek out new destinations and new couples and new planners and new decor and just new experiences that I wasn't getting there. And as hard as it was to leave a thriving market for myself, I needed to challenge myself and move on.
Wow. That's interesting. So, I know that you feel that there's a real power to relationship building. And so I'm curious how you start this with your clients. Like how is it that you connect with them and get that relationship building started?
That's such a great question. Relationships are so important. Ever since the advent of social media and that ability to start telling your story, for me, that was one of the biggest game changers because I was able to highlight my lifestyle and my personality and my charisma, some would say, in such an authentic way that it just started to create not only the brand awareness, but the couples that were seeing that and resonating with that, they're like, that's our guy for sure. So that started to create that environment where I was able to start attracting exactly the people I want to work with because they're like, that's our guy.
Yeah. It's interesting as you're saying this. There is. Yeah, you do have like a charisma about you. I've noticed on, I think Instagram, I've seen at least 3 clips where, and you know about this, where you're talking to the guests ahead of time. You get up there in front of them, you introduce yourselves, and I love this that you talk about how you're basically in a very polite way, in a very good way. You're talking about, please don't use your iPhones. Let me shoot the camera. I mean, can you say something about that for people listening? I think it's great what you do.
Thank you, Andy. So that's become known as the monologue. And
right.
And it started because, with the advent of smartphones, when we're talking 50, 60, 100 guests, everyone starts pulling their phones out. And what was happening was, the couples coming down the aisle, they're not getting to see all their guests' faces and their smiles. And they're not getting to the guests they're forgetting that they're not being present and mindful. So a friend had asked me all my big moves in this industry have been when I've helped out friends and come in for people. And she asked me, she's like, Chris, can you just do a little something? Just ask everyone else to be on their phones. And I did the first one, and then it started to develop. And then through my meditation, I've been doing a lot of deep meditation this year, and mindfulness and presence and living in the moment has become so important to me that's the core message of that monologue is let's experience this ceremony in our hearts and in our souls and witness it with our own eyes for our beautiful friends and this beautiful couple. And let us take care of the recording of it. You'll see it later, but let's just live in the moment.
God, I love that. Are you familiar with Eckhart Tolle?
I love Eckhart. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I had read his first book, The Power of Now, about 10 years ago. And for whatever reason, I didn't really take it in. And then it was about a year and a half ago, I did the audiobook because he narrates it and he's got such a soothing voice. And then the second book, A New Earth. And for some reason, for those listening, if you're not familiar with Eckhart Tolle, how do we really sum this up? It's a lot more than this, but essentially he's really just all about being in the moment. And after listening to his books and it really is not easy. It's just not as simple as saying, oh, I'm going to be in the moment. So I love how you're helping. I mean, look, I know you're also getting better shots because you don't have the crowd, you're in the shots, you don't have people with phones up in the air, but more importantly than that, what you addressed is that you're helping people to be there in the moment and to take in this, which also helps the couple too. I think they can feel it, that people are really paying attention.
For sure. And, and it's become so requested. Like, I would never do it if it wasn't requested. And, it's just truly, how can I serve my clients in the very best way? And ultimately, I want the guests to feel it, and like Eckhart says, it's like all we have is the now, and it is a practice, and it really is it's an exercise in putting away your distractions and being 100% present.
Yeah. Well, and look, I'm sure obviously during the reception, there are people that are going to be taking pictures and stuff like that. However, you're still setting the tone for the entire evening. That's what I also like too. You're really doing that. So, when it comes to working with the couple, now, I imagine there's some weddings where maybe you can only deal through the planner, or most of the time, are you in fact able to meet the clients ahead of time, talk to the couple, get to know them? What is that like for you?
Yeah. So at this stage, I am getting majority of my clients are coming through planners, but then I will always have the engagement session. And during that engagement session is where I really plant the entire garden. I plant all the seeds of we get to work together. I get to know them. We get to exchange just not only the experience of photography together, but we get to experience each other, and I'm so invested in the humanity of the wedding celebration and the stories of my couples that if I can't operate on the wedding day as if we've already been friends for 20 years, then what am I doing there? So that's what I try to bring to the table and to the relationship.
Yeah. So obviously they're getting a chance to connect with you so that they can feel less vulnerable, I imagine, for the rest of the entire event.
Exactly. Because in my days when I was in front of the camera, I worked with photographers who made me feel incredible. And I worked with photographers who made me feel terrible. So, the power a photographer has is really immense. And I really just want to use it to make people feel absolutely incredible.
Do you have any particular, I don't know if I want to call them techniques, but any kind of ways that you use to connect with them and to get them to feel more comfortable and loose around you?
Yeah, I think really for me, it's just, it starts in the very beginning, from when you just first walk into that room. Energy is everything, and if you come in and you're just guns a-blazing, camera in your hand, there has to be an art and a dance and a balance of just that approach, I guess we'll call it, the walk-in, the lead-in. And for me, I always like to come in, no camera in hand, just very soft, lower energy, introduce myself, give the compliments, start to build the vibe, and then we can start to elevate. Because if you come in and it's just too much too soon, they're going to get a little overwhelmed. So when you can read the energy and then build that energy together, you create an environment that is just incredible.
I want to make sure that you're aware of two other shows that are on the Wedding Biz Network. First, The Business of Being Creative, hosted by founder and president of The Business of Being Creative, Sean Lowe. Sean's consulting firm is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. Tune in every Tuesday to hear a new episode chock full of topics and advice for creative businesses. Also, check out the 2 seasons of Stop and Smell the Roses, hosted by the one and only lifestyle and event design expert, Preston Bailey. Preston speaks with such an honest voice. I know you're going to thoroughly enjoy hearing him on this unique platform. You can find both shows at theweddingbiznetwork.com or on your cell phone's podcast app for both The Business of Being Creative and Stop and Smell the Roses. Chris, I know you've shot weddings, obviously in the United States, but also Europe, Martha's Vineyard, California, Hawaii, elsewhere. You're traveling more and more. What are some of the challenges of doing destination weddings relative to, being more in your region?
I think it's really in the preparation. As a photographer, you've got to make sure that you've crossed all your T's and dot all your I's. You can't forget a battery or you can't forget any memory cards. You've got to pack appropriately for wardrobe. I'm very into dressing appropriately for events. So it's really just, there's a lot of pre-production that goes in and making sure that you don't forget anything, because it can be very, very hard to source something in a new place.
You mentioned in also dressing for it. It's interesting. So I have a band business, and for a couple decades, I performed in my premium band, and we traveled all over the world. And I had seen photographers everywhere and at all levels. As I was coming up with the business, whatever we want to call it, the mid-level, and then the ultra luxe. Chris, I can't tell you how many photographers. It's not all the time, but there are so many photographers who are dressed casual. I don't get it. I understand that they need to get around and, there's a lot of movement and being comfortable, but I think that part of it is how we appear. I think it's really important to complement what's going on with the environment, the decor, all of it.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel like, the way you dress is one of the ultimate reflections of your brands, first off. When you're walking into a black tie event, the couple they called for their event to be black tie for a very particular reason. They want that experience. They want because when you put on a tuxedo, you're kind of taking on a little bit of a different version of yourself, And so it's like when everyone can be part of that experience for the couple, it makes the day so much more magical and incredible. And as a front of house wedding professional, nothing shows more respect to the couple, to the parents, to the grandparents than when you are showing up and you are dressed to the nines, matching their style and their taste. You're going to fit right in and help foster that environment and that relationship.
Well, and also as the photographer, you are seen as much as the couple, because you're right up there, the ceremony, the reception, everything, you're there. So, I'm wondering, how do you feel about film versus digital? What do you use and how do you feel about it?
You know what? They're both incredible mediums. And I think, I feel that film still has its place and probably will for a very long time. The thing in today's modern society, I feel that people are wanting things so quickly, and the level of expectations for turnaround have become so fast. And, for me, I used to shoot hybrid, but I've phased out the film part of it because I want to live in the moment. And if I've got to spend, even if it's 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds changing a roll of film, I could miss the sublime moment. That's just not the softness and quality of film isn't worth missing a sublime soft moment to me for any reason.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And what is your perspective on lighting, composition, style? How do you look at all of that?
I'm the type of photographer, I want to shoot for the light. I'm not going to force a look over something. Like there's all kinds of buzzwords in the industry right now, as you know, of like light and airy, dark and moody. And look, if I show up and we got cloudy skies and we do have mood, I'm going to create a moodier body of work. If it's bright blue skies, gorgeous, bright, vibrant, I'm going to create that body of work. And it's not that that's going to mean that I don't have a particular style. It means I want to capture reality in the most beautiful, elevated way as I can, always focused on beautiful composition and skin tone.
Yeah, lighting is so critical. There's something that came up recently. I'm curious how you feel about it. I'm forgetting right now which, there was a major planner. I'm blanking on the name right now, who uses candles or incandescent lighting, and not LED, doesn't believe in that, feels it's too cold. And there's several, I'm sure there are a lot of designers out there that feel this way. And now you can't get incandescent light bulbs. How is it affecting you as a photographer, or how will it affect you as a photographer? Or does it really not make a difference?
It does make a difference because LEDs, when you're shooting on digital, and I don't know if it's the same for film, but sometimes the frequency that they're vibrating, they appear on to the naked eye, but sometimes when you're shooting, one frame could be completely dark and one frame will be perfectly lit, because there's a weird frequency that those lights vibrate at that sometimes a certain frame of your digital camera will kind of miss. But ultimately, it's like I can play with the white balance in the camera. I can warm things up. I can do so many things in post to give it essentially any look that I want.
Yeah. I also want to talk about the business aspect of running a high-end photo studio. What are some of the main ingredients to doing so successfully?
I feel the most important thing is you can't leave a single wedding without being so incredibly memorable that you have every single guest there remembers the photographer, for obviously a good reason. And for me, I set that stage. I set it through the monologue. I set it through my interaction with the bridesmaids, the groomsmen, the parents. I try my very best to have at least one touch point with every guest at a wedding, at least once. And so by the end of the night, when we're all packing up and leaving, and they've got my team, and no one's even seen a single photo, and every single person on the way out, they're like, you guys were amazing. Oh my gosh, we can't wait to see the pictures. And we have that incredible amount of buzz before anyone's seen anything, just through the way we conducted ourselves and carried ourselves through the event. That's one of the single most important aspects for me.
What about the opposite? Is there anything that, if you were giving advice, let's say, to some photographers who just want to get to that next level, what do they need to avoid?
I think you should avoid, not dressing up. I mean, you've got to invest in your brand. You've got to put yourself in the room. If you're not attending networkings and mixers, that's going to hold you back. If you're not putting yourself out there, like at reaching out to planners, using Instagram, emails, like you've got to put yourself out there. And I've been on the education circuit lately doing some keynotes, and a lot of photographers out there are telling me they're intimidated to reach out to planners, or they're intimidated to reach out to these venues, but you got nothing to lose, just put yourself out there. You absolutely have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely. I know for my music career, it made all the difference when I started going out to conferences and networking. And I don't think networking is a bad word. I think it's wonderful. It's a wonderful opportunity.
It's the best word for sure. Because if you're not there, there's gonna be 100 people that are there. So you gotta be in the room.
Yeah. How are you maximizing PR? To help you get the next high profile wedding. How do you handle that?
Oh, I love that question. PR is such an important part of what we do. It creates not only the first round of buzz when something new comes out. I was fortunate enough to do Jodie Sweetin's wedding. She was little Stephanie Tanner on Full House. And that was with the amazing Sarah Landon. Shout out to you, planning that event. And we, came out on People. And then, so obviously we had all that promotion. Then I promoted it again. And then that was front page on my website, popping up. So it's taking every opportunity and every bit of PR that comes your way, and how can you use it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways to keep the buzz of that and the energy of that going. So I try to always get, like I said, between 5 and 8 different cross-platform usages for every bit of PR that I get.
Can you give some examples?
So I'm going to blog it. I'm going to Instagram it. I'm going to do a direct mail to my email mailing list. I'm going to break it out and do different grids on my Instagram, so I can be using that as different social media platforms. And I'm just going to use that again in introduction letters to new planners and to new magazines I want to shoot for. So you can always be leveraging your PR in unique and different ways.
You mentioned, in terms of getting published, you've had a good handful of magazine covers, including 3 with People magazine, and you've had others as well, California Wedding Day. And what is the difference when you're thinking of being published? How does that affect your approach?
I'm going to take that in 2 parts. The first part, that the power of publishing is in that social proof. The world now knows that these people trusted you to perform at this level of the craft. So that's step 1. Step 2, when I'm shooting, if it's going to be a real couple for an editorial, I'm going to ask the question right away, do we have any obligations? Because a lot of times on these celebrity events, they're going to have the rings are donated by so-and-so, the dress is from so-and-so. They might have a sponsorship with a car deal. Like you don't know until you ask. So they're going to be, oh yeah, we have all these obligations. So you'll get a series of shots that you have to get in addition to just the wedding shots. Right? So you're going to create that body of work on top of everything else. When I'm shooting for a magazine, if it's going to be a straight editorial and a cover, then we have to sit down. Okay, what's our concept behind the shoot? What's our location? We get all the logistics worked out. And then for me, I love taking that editorial experience, working with art directors and creating that fashion look that I love so much, and then bringing it over to real couples and giving that beautiful bride who's never been a model before, giving her that same experience to feel and to pose and move in that same way is so fun.
Yeah. Well, I've got two more questions. I'm going to save a big one for last. So for photographers listening, what gear are you currently using?
I'm still on my Canon 5D Mark IVs. I love them so much. Some people, we've already gone to mirrorless, so many people, but I love the look. I love the feel. I know that camera inside and out that I don't ever even have to think about the mechanics of it. I'm just dancing with my couple. I'm using all prime lenses, the 50 millimeter 1.2 never leaves camera A, and then a variety of like some telephotos and maybe some wides for the dance party. But Canon 5D Mark IV is my baby.
Yeah, great. So last question. What, I know, especially with your interest in mindfulness and what we were talking about earlier, what does it mean to you to be successful in this industry? How do you define that?
Wow, that is the best question for last, Andy. Success is so many things. I'm going to say I'm going to answer it in several parts. The first part of success for me is being able to support my family and to really, at this point, have created a lifestyle for myself that I never really thought possible. I didn't think that on most, Tuesdays at 10:30, I could, let's just go surf for 3 hours. I'm so lucky and I'm so blessed. So for me, step one, success is creating this lifestyle for myself. Step two is I get to travel the world and tell these incredible love stories and watching people promise to take care of each other. That's the biggest success, I think, of everything, is to create a record and a body of work for two people that is so special and will be celebrated for so long. Like that's another huge success point. And finally, just success for me is knowing and being part of a community of so many special, incredible people that love this industry as much as I do. And I think ultimately that's one of the biggest things of success for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. Everything you're saying, and you're right, the sense of community too. Well, geez, Chris, this has been really, really wonderful. I thank you for taking the time. I really respect what you do, your work, and just this has been great conversation.
Andy, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you in person again. Hopefully we can play some music one day.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Chris J. Evans. Be sure to check out his website, which is chrisjevans.com. You can also find him on Instagram at Chris Evans Photo. And be sure to check out the show notes with event pics that Chris provided in your cell phone's podcast app or at our website of theweddingbiz.com. And next week's guest is going to be a revisit of my conversation with Rob Van Helden of Rob Van Helden Floral Design Limited out of London. Rob's previous clientele includes Nelson Mandela, Pierce Bronson, Joe Malone, Elton John, and various royal weddings and events, including Princess Beatrice, Princess Eugenie, and Princess Margaret's 70th birthday. So that's a really interesting episode. And finally, you can follow us on Instagram at The Wedding Biz, and we'll catch you next week.